I didn't laugh. That was my first mistake. When I looked at the place card, thick beige paper with gold edges and fancy handwriting, I saw the words, "Idiot Trash." I didn't smile. I didn't react. I just stared at it while the whole table burst into laughter. My wife laughed. Her boss laughed. 2 junior partners laughed. Even the salesman with the Bluetooth headset laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. "Relax, babe. It's just a joke," my wife said with a smirk, already tipsy from the wine. Her red nails tapped against the table while everyone enjoyed my humiliation. I sat down quietly. Not because I accepted it, but because I wanted to see how far they would take it. The table was right in the center of the ballroom, close to the stage. A spotlight brushed across the white tablecloth. Huge flowers blocked parts of the view, giving people enough privacy to whisper and gossip. Across from me sat Leonard, her boss. He wore expensive cufflinks shaped like middle fingers. Classy. He leaned toward my wife and whispered something behind his hand, but I still heard the end of it. More useful when he stays quiet. She laughed again. Not a real laugh. The fake one she used at networking events and rich brunch parties. The kind where her mouth smiled, but her eyes searched the room for someone more important. I looked down at the card again. Not Jonathan. Not Mr. Harris. Just Idiot Trash. That's when I realized this wasn't a random prank. Someone approved it. Someone printed it. Someone placed it carefully at my seat. Leonard raised his glass. "To our honorary guest," he said. "Hope dinner isn't too complicated for you." Everyone laughed again. "You've come a long way from sheet metal and wrenchwork, huh?" That's what my wife told people about me. That I was some blue-collar guy who got lucky marrying into success. That I barely understood business. That I spent my days fixing machines and reading manuals. She turned my life into a joke because the truth made her uncomfortable. Yes, I started with little. But I understood money, contracts, and business better than anyone at that table. I smiled. Not a weak smile. Not an embarrassed one. A cold smile. The kind that says, "I see everything." The waiter served steak. I ate quietly while they kept making jokes. I stayed calm. I listened. I remembered every detail. Then dessert arrived. Some expensive chocolate mousse covered in edible gold. I took one bite, set the spoon down, wiped my mouth, and stood up. My wife barely noticed. She was too busy whispering to Leonard. I walked across the ballroom, past the fake laughter and clinking glasses, toward the company president standing near the bar. When he saw me coming, his face changed instantly. He knew exactly who I was. Not because we were friends, but because 6 months earlier, he had seen my name on a trust document. A name important enough to make him nervous. He started greeting me with some corporate smile, but I raised 2 fingers to stop him. Then I leaned closer and whispered 2 short sentences. That was all. His expression tightened immediately. He gave a small nod, trying not to attract attention, but I could see the panic in his eyes. Everything had changed. Not for me. For them. I walked back past the table, past my wife, past the stupid place card still sitting there like evidence. I left it behind. I didn't need it anymore. Because now, the real joke was about to begin. And this time, I was the one writing the punchline. The first time my wife mocked me in public was years ago at another company dinner. Long tables. Fancy food. Fake smiles. She was still new at the firm back then. Nervous. Ambitious. At one point, I joked that the wine tasted like nail polish remover. Everyone laughed. She didn't. Instead, she smiled awkwardly and said, "Sorry, he's not really corporate. He's more of a nuts and bolts guy." It hurt. Not enough to ruin the night. But enough to remember forever. On the drive home from tonight's dinner, that memory kept replaying in my head. The truth was, she never really understood where her company's success came from. Years ago, after her father died, the business was falling apart. She needed money fast. I stepped in quietly. I handled taxes, paperwork, legal issues, property transfers, everything. Then I suggested creating a blind trust to protect the family assets. She signed the papers without reading much. She trusted me completely back then. The company needed funding, so I arranged it through the trust. In return, 80% of the company ownership temporarily moved into that trust. What she never understood was one important detail. I was the trustee, meaning the company might have carried her name. But legally, I controlled everything. I never reminded her. That was my mistake. I thought love mattered more than power. I thought she appreciated everything I did behind the scenes. But over time, she stopped seeing me as a partner. I became the man who fixed problems. The man who stayed quiet. The man she thought would always tolerate disrespect. Tonight proved how wrong I was. Back in my study, I opened my safe and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were contracts, ownership documents, trust agreements, and signed legal papers prepared over the last year. Just in case. Because real power isn't loud. Real power is being prepared. Earlier that night, when I spoke to the company president, I gave him a simple phrase, a private signal arranged months ago with my lawyer. That phrase activated everything. Then I said one more name. Polaris Strat Holdings. The company my wife hated most. A ruthless corporation that had tried to buy her firm for years. Every time they made an offer, someone quietly rejected it. That someone was me. She never knew. But tonight, I stopped protecting her company. Within minutes, lawyers moved. Contracts were opened. Documents were released. The sale began immediately. At 10:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. Polaris signed. Deal closed. Phase 2 started. Phase 2 was simple. Shut everything down. The company had always looked strong from the outside. Inside, it was fragile. Like many fast-growing startups, they expanded too quickly and never built solid systems underneath. Payroll was outsourced. IT support was handled by contractors. Their employee access system depended on multiple third-party logins connected through Slack and cloud servers. And hidden deep inside those systems was something nobody remembered anymore. A master access token. I had it. Years earlier, when the trust funded their Series B investment round, I added conditions into the agreement. Quiet conditions. One of them gave me emergency access to every major system the company installed afterward. Nobody paid attention back then. They should have. While my wife laughed at dinner beside Leonard and toasted the company's future, the shutdown had already started. Shared drives were disconnected. Admin accounts were revoked. Executive access permissions were quietly removed one by one. The first office locked out? Hers. And still, nobody suspected me. To them, I was just the quiet husband who didn't belong in corporate spaces. The boring accessory standing beside a successful woman. I never needed to yell. I only whispered 2 sentences at dinner, walked away, and let the system I built wake up on its own. My lawyer, Daniel Owenstein, wasn't the kind of man you forgot meeting. He wore custom Italian suits that looked expensive enough to stop bullets. He spoke carefully, like every sentence was planned 3 moves ahead. Years ago, he worked in federal regulatory law back when billion-dollar mergers were actually investigated instead of rubber-stamped. People feared him. Once, he stopped a massive defense industry merger with a single footnote hidden inside a legal filing. Daniel didn't just practice law. He weaponized it. And for the last 3 years, he had been preparing this exact moment for me. After my old estate lawyer made mistakes handling one of my holding companies, I searched for someone ruthless and precise. That search led me to Daniel. When I first showed him the trust documents and explained the ownership structure, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "So," he said calmly, flipping through the papers, "she thinks the company is hers." I nodded. How romantic. At the time, I still didn't want revenge. I just wanted protection, an emergency exit if things ever collapsed. So Daniel built one. Quietly. Legally. Carefully. First, he updated the trust agreement, giving me full authority to restructure company ownership if there was reputational damage or financial risk. Those words sounded harmless. They weren't. Then he added hidden clauses buried inside ordinary-looking documents. Nothing flashy. Nothing obvious. We also purchased additional voting shares from an early investor, giving us stronger legal leverage if a merger offer ever appeared. Polaris already knew the numbers required. They had tried to buy the company before. Every time, I rejected them silently through the trust. But this time was different. The moment I left the ballroom, Daniel opened the vault. Before I even reached my car, Polaris had already received the updated sale documents with verified approvals and timestamps attached. The second they signed, the company's systems triggered automatic control transfer clauses built into the old investment agreements. Those clauses gave us legal authority to remove executive access immediately. No warning. No board meeting. No discussion. Just click. Gone. Daniel even added another condition Paul Aries loved. A strict non-compete agreement. The company's top executives, including my wife and Leonard, were banned from working in the industry for 2 years after the acquisition. Not as employees. Not as consultants. Not even secretly under another name. If they violated it, the financial penalties would destroy them. Daniel planned every detail perfectly. Paul Aries didn't send emotional negotiators or transition managers. They sent cold professionals. People trained to finish deals without hesitation. Their IT teams already rehearsed the takeover weeks earlier. Their HR department had termination plans prepared. By sunrise, cardboard storage boxes were already being delivered to company headquarters. Everything was ready before anyone realized what was happening. The disrespect at that dinner wasn't new. It was simply the final confirmation I needed. My wife didn't just underestimate me. She believed I was irrelevant. Replaceable. Useful only when convenient. That night, after I sent Daniel a photo of the place card labeled idiot trash, he replied with only 2 words. Understood. Ignition. And the machine began moving. Quietly. Relentlessly. By midnight, the deal was finished. By morning, the company was already dying. The collapse started silently. At 8 a.m., Taylor, the office manager feared by everyone because she remembered everything, arrived at work and discovered every shared company folder locked. Access denied. She rebooted the VPN. Nothing. She tried backup credentials. Still nothing. Slack wouldn't load. Emails bounced back instantly. All she saw was a polite message. Your session has been terminated. Please contact system administration. By 8:07, junior associates were gathering behind her desk, whispering nervously. One asked quietly, "Is this another phishing test?" Nobody laughed. At 8:10, Sophie, my wife's assistant, noticed something strange while scheduling a client meeting. My wife's company profile had disappeared completely. No email account. No employee ID. No contact card. It was like she had never worked there at all. Sophie refreshed the screen again and again before finally walking into the corner office. My wife stood in front of the mirror adjusting her blouse like it was a normal morning. Perfect hair. Perfect makeup. Still wearing the necklace I bought her on our 5th anniversary. I can't find your account in the system, Sophie said nervously. My wife barely looked up. Probably another IT mistake, she said casually. Leonard will scream at them later. I can't email you either, Sophie whispered. Your address is bouncing back. That finally got her attention. For a second, she blinked in confusion. Then she laughed lightly. He's probably upset, she said coldly. He gets dramatic when his feelings are hurt. She never even said my name. Across the office, Leonard stood near the windows staring silently at his phone. No jokes. No smug smile. Just fear. Because unlike my wife, Leonard understood what was happening. He remembered seeing me whisper something to the company president at dinner the night before. He remembered the president's expression changing instantly. Not surprise. Acceptance. The kind of look a person makes when they realize the outcome is unavoidable. Now Leonard was connecting the pieces together. The trust. The investment structure. The hidden authority buried inside old agreements. The ghost inside the company machine finally had a face. Mine. Soon the entire office began whispering. Phones stopped working. Client files disappeared. HR systems locked everyone out. Even the office espresso machine refused access because employee badges had been disabled. At 8:42 a.m., the company president walked through the office carrying a thin leather folder. Everyone went silent, expecting reassurance. He gave none. An update is coming shortly, he said calmly before walking into his office. My wife folded her arms angrily. That's it, she snapped. You're not even going to explain what's happening. He ignored her completely. That's when Leonard finally understood the truth. The trust had always held power over the company. And now it was using it. My wife still thought this was personal drama. A hurt husband overreacting. She still didn't understand the scale of what she had unleashed. Then, at exactly 10:02 a.m., Outlook notification sounds echoed across the office. One by one, employees checked their inboxes. Conversations stopped. Faces turned pale. The subject line read, Company acquisition and operational closure notice. My wife opened the email with shaking fingers. The message was brutally simple. Effective immediately, ownership of the company has transferred. All positions are dissolved pending asset review. Further instructions will follow. No logos. No sympathy. No explanation. Just black text on a white screen. Like a death certificate. For 2 full seconds, nobody moved. Then panic spread through the office. What does dissolved mean? Are we being liquidated? My badge stopped working. I just got kicked out of Teams. Real panic isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silence. Frozen faces. Shaking hands. People realizing the ground beneath them disappeared before they even noticed the crack. Then my wife shot up from her chair so fast the wheels screamed across the floor. Her heels hit the floor hard as she marched toward the president's office. The same office I had walked into the night before. The door was already open. Inside, it was empty. No president. No laptop. No legal papers stacked on the desk. Even his favorite expensive pen was gone. The whiteboard had been wiped clean. The framed photo of his daughter that always sat near the window had disappeared too. The only thing left was the faint mark on the wall where his nameplate used to hang. Karen froze in the doorway, breathing hard. "Where the hell is he?" she snapped. She stopped herself when 2 interns passed by, whispering nervously. Sophie stood behind her, pale and shaking. "Call him," Karen ordered. Sophie swallowed. "I tried. His number's disconnected." Karen turned to Leonard. "This has to be a mistake. Deals like this need board approval. Compliance would have stopped it." Leonard didn't answer. He was staring at the acquisition email on his phone, reading it again and again like the words might somehow change. Then his thumb opened the attachment. A scanned legal notice appeared. Stamped. Signed. Official. At the bottom was the seal. Polaris Strat Holdings. Karen snatched the phone from his hand. The color drained from her face. Polaris. She said the name like she'd just seen a ghost. She had mocked Polaris for years. Called them corporate vultures. Soulless buyers who destroyed everything they touched. She used to brag about rejecting their offers, telling people she would never sell out the company culture she built. But now none of that mattered. Because the paper said Polaris owned everything. And paper always wins. She rushed back to her office and grabbed her laptop. Her hands shook as she typed her login. Access denied. She tried again. Same result. She grabbed her phone and called the compliance director. Disconnected. She called the board liaison. No answer. Then she called me. Straight to voicemail. For the first time, her own words came back to haunt her. He's probably just pouting. The sentence repeated in her mind like an insult thrown back harder than she ever gave it. Her hand slipped into her purse. She felt the folded place card. Idiot trash. For some reason, she held onto it like proof of the world she had ruled just yesterday. And then her eyes filled with tears. Not sadness. Confusion. The walls of her world hadn't fallen down. They had simply vanished. No warning. No fight. Just clean removal. Like surgery. Somewhere in the hallway, someone was crying. Phones kept ringing with nobody left to answer them. Karen sat slowly in her chair and stared at her reflection in the dark laptop screen. For the first time in years, she looked uncertain. Leonard grabbed her arm and pulled her into a side hallway. People rushed past them carrying coffee cups and phones, all asking the same question. What do we do now? Nobody had answers. HR was gone. Legal wasn't responding. The company still had lights, desks, and walls. But it was already dead. Karen looked stunned. Just that morning she had been practicing lines for a magazine interview about women in business leadership. Now her company email didn't exist. Her office access was gone. And her career was collapsing in real time. Leonard shut the hallway door behind them. His face was pale. For once, there was no smugness left. He looked terrified. He stared at her and finally asked, "Did you know your husband controlled the trust?" Karen blinked. "What?" "That Series B trust," he said slowly. "The silent investor." Years ago, Leonard had laughed at those documents. Called them boring legal overkill. Karen had signed them without reading carefully. She had been too busy chasing clients, appearances, and branding. She always told people. My husband knew someone who arranged the funding. Now Leonard understood the truth. Her husband was that someone. Karen forced a laugh. A weak, fake laugh. Don't be ridiculous, she said. He wouldn't even know how to do something like this. But even she didn't believe it. Too many things suddenly made sense. The way the president looked at me last night. The way every system shut down perfectly. The way Paul Aries moved without negotiation. This hadn't been a hostile takeover. It had been invited. And I had opened the door. Karen leaned against the wall. Her mouth felt dry. Her thoughts raced. Then she remembered my face at dinner. The moment I saw the place card. I hadn't looked angry. I hadn't looked hurt. I had looked calm. Quiet. Calculating. She had mistaken that silence for weakness. Leonard leaned closer and said softly. He didn't need courage. He had control. And we handed it to him. That was the moment it finally hit her. This wasn't revenge born from anger. This had been built slowly, patiently, silently, and she had laughed straight into it. At 2:37 that afternoon, the news went public. The headline was simple. Paul Aries Strat announces strategic acquisition of regional competitor. To most people, it looked like ordinary business news. To everyone still trapped inside the office, it sounded like a gunshot. The statement was short and cold. We are committed to maximizing shareholder value and aligning personnel needs with future operations. Everyone understood what that meant. They were all finished. Phones exploded with screenshots. Private chats filled with panic. Some tried to analyze the legal wording. Others already knew. The company was gone. Not changing. Not restructuring. Gone. Karen stood in the middle of the office floor staring at her phone. Leonard had disappeared into a conference room, shouting into his Bluetooth headset at people who could no longer help him. Karen tried calling the Paul Aries executive listed in the press release. The call disconnected instantly. Again and again. And then she understood. Paul Aries hadn't bought the company to save it. They bought it to strip it apart. The brand. The client list. The contracts. Everything valuable would be absorbed. The people. Disposable. That was the cruelest part. No goodbye meetings. No farewell speeches. No thank you messages. Just erasure. As if they had never mattered at all. Karen tried gathering what remained of her team for an emergency meeting. Only 6 people came. 2 were deactivated halfway through and walked out. One quietly asked, "Should we start applying for other jobs?" Karen had no answer. Even the interns had stopped pretending to respect her. Now they whispered about me. The quiet husband. The joke at dinner. The man she underestimated. Questions floated through the office. Wait, he was the trustee. Did she really not know? Was he always this smart? Karen walked back to what used to be her office. The card reader beside the door had already gone dark. She pushed the door open before it locked completely. Inside, the screens were black. The chair was gone. She sank to the floor and leaned against the glass wall. Outside, the sun was setting behind the city skyline. For the first time in her life, she had nothing left to control. Long shadows stretched across the office floor as the evening sun faded behind the city skyline. Karen sat alone in what used to be her office and slowly pulled the folded place card from her purse. The paper was bent in the middle now. A small wine stain marked one corner from the dinner the night before. Her thumb brushed across the words again. Idiot trash. But this time, the words felt different. Maybe the trash had never been him. And maybe the real idiot didn't need the label explained anymore. Somewhere else in the city, the man she had mocked for years was probably sitting calmly with Daniel Lernstein, drinking coffee while Paul Aries completed the takeover exactly as planned. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. Out of control. And now the only person truly in control was the one everyone ignored. Outside, the sky turned deep orange. The office lights flickered strangely overhead. Motion sensors kept trying to detect movement, but most of the building was empty now. The parking lot, once packed with luxury cars and company Teslas, had almost cleared out. A few employees still lingered outside holding cardboard boxes filled with random pieces of their old lives. One carried a desk plant. Another held framed photos. One man stood beside his car staring at the building like it had betrayed him personally. Security had taken over the entrance. Not the usual smiling reception staff. These were silent professionals in dark jackets with military posture and emotionless faces. They watched former employees walk out carrying boxes, stunned and speechless. Most of them weren't just losing jobs. They were losing identities. Karen stood near the glass wall of her office watching it happen below. Her desk was gone. Her chair had been removed. Even her nameplate had disappeared so cleanly that the dust around it still showed where it used to sit. Loose cables curled from the floor where someone unplugged her monitors without even asking. She had spent years designing this office. Every lamp, every piece of furniture, every carefully chosen decoration meant to project power and success. She once told someone, "A room should make people feel your authority before you even speak." Now the room reflected only emptiness. Her fingers tightened around the place card. Idiot trash. It had started as a stupid joke between her and Leonard during dinner. Something small. Something cruel. They never thought he would react. Honestly, they barely thought about him at all. He usually avoided those events anyway. Too many fake conversations. Too many people pretending to matter. But this time he had shown up. He sat there quietly while they laughed at him. Then he walked away. That was all. Karen thought he would sulk for a few days. Maybe sleep in the guest room. Maybe complain during therapy. Instead, he dismantled her entire world in less than 24 hours. Now employees she used to command were carrying boxes out of the building while Paul Aries prepared shredding teams and integration audits upstairs. The company she called her empire had become another asset on someone else's spreadsheet. And through all of it, he remained silent. No angry messages. No threats. No smug victory speech. Just silence. That was what scared her most. Because silence meant planning. Silence meant patience. Silence meant he had decided everything long before she realized there was even danger. Karen sat on the window ledge, her heels tapping softly against the steel frame. The place card bent further in her hand. There was nobody left to call. The board was gone. The president had disappeared. Leonard had vanished, probably hiding with lawyers or alcohol somewhere downtown. And Karen? She had no office, no staff, no authority, only a new reputation. The woman who mocked her husband and lost everything. She waited until after sunset to call him. Maybe she thought darkness would make the conversation easier. Maybe she hoped some part of him still cared. The phone rang once. Then voicemail. His voice sounded calm, controlled, precise. "You made your opinion of me clear," he said. "Now I've made mine. Any further communication goes through legal." That was it. No anger. No shouting. Just a quiet door closing forever. Karen held the phone against her ear for several extra seconds, hoping somehow the call would come back. It didn't. The room stayed silent. Then her laptop made one final notification sound. An email. Sender. Daniel Lernstein. No subject line. She opened it slowly. The message was brutally short. "As trustee, my client has no further business with your firm." Nothing else. No signature. No sympathy. Just cold finality. Below the message sat one attachment. Sale_confirmation_final_executed.pdf. Karen clicked it. Legal documents filled the screen. Signatures. Official seals. Bank routing numbers. Timestamps down to the exact minute. The acquisition was complete. Irreversible. The trust had fully transferred ownership. No appeals. No negotiations. No second chances. He hadn't simply walked away from her. He had erased every bridge behind him. Karen slowly lowered herself into a cheap plastic chair left behind by maintenance workers. Her old executive chair was already gone. Probably rolled away by interns who had no idea whose office this used to be. The plastic seat squeaked beneath her. She didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on one sentence from Daniel's email. "My client has no further business with your firm." Not with you. Not with Karen. With your firm. Cold. Professional. Final. And suddenly Karen realized the worst part of all this wasn't losing the company. It wasn't the public embarrassment. It was understanding that she never truly knew the man she married. When did he begin planning this? When did he hire Daniel? When did he quietly build an escape route and simply wait for her to destroy the marriage herself? She remembered the dinner. The place card. The laughter. Leonard joking that her husband was more of a warning sign than a partner. And she remembered his reaction. That small calm smile. Not hurt. Not emotional. Measured. Like he was quietly taking notes. She once mocked him by saying, "He doesn't understand how this world works." Now she finally understood the truth. He didn't need to understand her world. He only needed to know where the switches were hidden. And all along, he had been standing behind the curtain with his hand on the master control. This wasn't revenge. Revenge is loud. Emotional. Careless. This was something colder. Cleaner. More complete. The man everyone dismissed as unimportant hadn't just understood power. He mastered it quietly. And by the time anyone noticed, it was already too late.